It's hardly shocking when presidential candidates carp about their press coverage, but those complaints are especially vociferous this year, as we saw in my sit-down last week with Donald Trump.
They don't want to cover me accurately. I see such dishonesty. They have a couple of sites like Politico. It's totally dishonest. They will say things that are unbelievably wrong purposely.
But there is only one business in America that is protected by the Constitution, and that is the press. When they become partisan, which they are, they distort the system. When news media pick one word or one phrase and they run with it and they try to characterize people like that, I gotta tell you guys, that's why people don't trust you anymore. I mean, you're down there with used car salesmen.
Joining us now is Brit Hume, Fox's senior political analyst and a chronicler of many presidential campaigns. All right, let's start with Donald Trump. He said to me last week, much of the media are dishonest and unfair to him. He talks about polls, he talks about crowds, and he uses Twitter to hit back at specific commentators and hosts and anchors, some of them on Fox, some of them elsewhere. Does he have a legitimate beef?
I think he does, but there are two sides to the coin with him. I think some of the coverage of him has been something to complain about, words used sort of out of context to portray him as having said something more extreme than he intended or than he actually said. But the other side of that is he has gotten a volume of coverage that is unprecedented in my experience. I have never seen anything like it. It has subsided a bit now, but
it's still a tsunami.
But it's enormous. And there were periods of time back in August in particular when he was going to make a speech or have some kind of an appearance and he'd take a few questions ahead of time when, cable networks would take the questions, which would go on for quite a while, and then they'd take the whole speech live without commercial interruption. Nobody has ever gotten coverage like that, and of course, it was a huge bonanza for him. Now he knows how to be colorful, and he knows how to get a rating, and as long as that's true, the compulsion, the temptation to cover everything he says is going to be there.
I think some commentators early on quite openly dismissed him, didn't take him seriously, mocked him, diminished him. Many of them have now had to walk that back. In fact, our colleague Chris Wallace had a fine interview with him on Fox News Sunday. Said afterwards, and you were on the show, saying, I am beginning to believe that Donald Trump can be elected president of the United States. That's a change.
I thought that was a particularly striking comment from Chris. I mean, I'm at the point now where I can see how he could become the nominee of the Republican Party. It seems to me that then getting what you'd need to become president when it's not just Republicans or Republican sympathizers voting in a primary ballot or whatever, that's a tall order. And
but just to say that you could see him
exactly,
nominee, that's a sea change.
Huge.
All right.
Or huge, I should say. Huge.
All right, we just saw Ben Carson, and he's really gotten into with the press lately over his answer on whether he would advocate a Muslim president, over his answer on what he would do if faced with a mass shooter, and then it kind of went into what Jews could have done if they were armed in Nazi Germany, and he believed the press is unfair to him. Does he have a point?
I thought some of the reactions to his statements were bordered on hysterical. And I see long articles being written that say, well, no, actually, the guns would not have helped the Jews. And then there'd be some sort of social science study or something that would suggest that. So I think he's got a legitimate beef there, but this is true too. If this is the NFL, you get hit harder up at this level,
and you got to be able to take the hits.
And you got to be able to take it, and you got to be able to anticipate it, and you got to be very careful how you phrase things, or these things will happen to you. Now that doesn't make it fair or right that they do, but that's the playing field you're on, and the smart and able politicians plan for that, prepare for that, and are ready for that.
Right. That's certainly what Ted Cruz has said for a long time, that he doesn't expect the media to be fair to Republicans, that he believes the GOP are portrayed as kind of either stupid or evil. Here's what he said to me a while back.
Look, the mainstream media is not fair and impartial. That they have served, I believe, as the Praetorian Guard protecting Barack Obama in this presidency. And I think no one is more ready for Hillary than the mainstream media.
But is that an overstatement? All of the mainstream media? I mean, it's the same mainstream media that has reported aggressively on Hillary's emails.
Well, that's right, and that's the point. That was exactly what I was thinking of when he said that. Yeah, a lot of the mainstream media are biased, and when it gets down to it, in the fall campaign, we will see this. the Democratic nominee, whoever that may be, is going to get more favorable coverage, or at least much less unfavorable coverage, than the Republican nominee will. That has been true for as long as I can remember, and it'll be true here.
All right, the CNBC debate is coming up, and both Donald Trump and Ben Carson, although Trump was a little bit more public about it, said, we ain't showing up if this thing is 3 hours. It was going to be 2 hours. CNBC, like CNN, sees prospect of big ratings, big ad dollars. First, let's deal with the substance of the Trump-Carson complaint. Was this an effort by a network to just, sell some more ads at jacked up rates?
Perhaps. If you got a good piece of programming on, and people are going to watch, you're not going to cut it short. I mean, obviously 3 hours, and there's precedent for it. The last debate was 3 hours.
Right.
So
right.
I mean, I don't fault them for trying, and the question is whether two candidates should be able to dictate the length of the debate to the network that's doing it.
You anticipated my second question, which is, so CNBC now backing off, and there was a compromise about opening statements, and now will only be 2 hours as originally planned. Does Trump show the art of the deal here, and basically saying he's going to take his marbles and not show up? I mean, I never had any doubt they'd work it out, but it put CNBC in a pretty defensive position.
I think it does, and I think that is the art of the deal at work. He knew he had the leverage because he's the guy that gets the ratings. Carson, to some extent, the same thing. They had the leverage, and they used it. And it is a little bit of an irony to think of Donald Trump, who says that Jeb Bush lacks energy, to say he doesn't want a 3-hour debate because it's too long, as if it would be hard.
Well, Trump told Chris Wallace he could stand up there for 12 hours, but the viewers shouldn't have to sit through.
Well, yeah, he was doing it for the viewers.
Yes,
that's what it was.
You're impressed.
Yes,
all right,
of course.
Brit Hume, thanks very much for stopping by this Sunday. Next on Media Buzz, the press plays up those who say the House Benghazi investigation is politically motivated as Hillary Clinton prepares to testify. And later, why Playboy is facing the naked truth and going PG-13.